So welcome to another fabulous episode of My Orgasmic Life. And today I'm really, really excited. I got a guest and we're going to have a really fun and juicy and real and raw and honest conversation about what it's like to be a prodominatrix and how it affects the rest of our lives. And so a little bit of content warning. First of all, this episode is brought to you by tickle.life. Second of all, content warning. We're going to get explicit. I'm pretty sure if you spend any time with me, I will swear. So swearing is guaranteed. And who knows what kind of kinks we might end up talking about. So if you are like, oh my God, listen to my shame one earlier today. I did. That'll help you deal with that, okay? And remember, take care of yourself. Do whatever it is you need to do for yourself. All right, so I'm going to have my guest, my delightful guest, introduce herself in whatever capacity she wants to introduce herself. So the floor is yours, my dear.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you so much for having me on the show. So I go by many names since we're going to be talking about the prodomme aspect. I used to go by Mistress Venetia, which was my prodomme name. I've now come back to myself, which is Veronika. And I've had other names in between that, but let's call me V for today.
All right, V it is. V it is. And for talking about names, I go by a couple of different names too. I have Empress Gaia, Mistress Gaia. I got Gaia. So you can call me. Let's just make it simple. We'll just do initials today. G.
All right.
You're V. I'm G.
Sounds good. Easy breezy.
Easy breezy. Okay, so all of our listeners that are listening live on Facebook right now, I will be bouncing back and forth. Sometimes I get so enthralled in the conversation that I'm having with my co-host that I forget to check in with you guys. And I'm sorry about that in advance, but I promise before we sign out, I will make sure I check to see if there's any questions, any comments, anything that you want to know further about, okay? All right, so let's get this rolling. So let's start tell us a little story about you being a prodomme, because you're not a prodomme anymore, right?
No, I've retired.
So tell me about your journey before you retired.
Okay. So it started as a fetish model. I was modeling, got bored of that kind of stuff, moved into fetish modeling. And at that point, I had no idea what fetish, what BDSM was. I learned about it in that domain, if I want to say. And got really curious about it. And I was like, oh, this is fun, and it's like, it's a rabbit hole. Once you start, it's like, ooh, there's this and ooh, there's that. And it just like keeps going. So I got really intrigued by it. And then my agent had this different gig. And he said, well, there's this Dom movie, a dominatrix movie that you'd be great for. And I was like, okay, well, what does that mean? Like, what is that? So he's like, well, here's a video, have a look at it. So I watched it and I was like, okay, well, basically I have to be a bitch. I can do that. Because that's what you think, right? When you don't know, you look at it and you're like, okay, I got to be a bitch. I got to be mean to this dude. Yeah, okay, I could do that. And it was timed perfectly with me quitting smoking. So as you know, like bitch power, to the max. So I took the gig and I showed up, and it was my first time, ever doing that. So he explained it to me, and then the sub came, and of course the sub actor is a real sub. And so he came and he was like, okay, so there's going to be this point, where you have to slap me and like do it for real. Like, don't pretend, like really slap me, you know? And I was like, you want me to slap you? I'm like, okay. So I give him like a tap on the face, and he's like, no, like slap me. And I was like, you want me to slap you like really hard? He's like, yes, like do it really hard as if you're upset, you know? And I'm like, okay. And I just like freaking slap him really hard. And he's like, and I felt immediately, I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, I feel so bad, you know? And he was like, oh, that was great. He's like, that was so good. And he's like, do it like that. And I was like, are you kidding me? I feel horrible. And he's like, no. He's like, understand. Like, I like that. Like, I get off on that. And it was just such a, like, I just couldn't wrap my head. Yeah, such a mind fuck. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I was like, you like that? Like, someone would do that to me, I would murder you. Like, you do not slap me in the face. It is the most insulting, disrespectful thing someone can do to me, you know? And then this guy's like, his eyes just lit up, you know? So I was like, okay. So we get through the movie and, you know, foot fetish and a little bit of spanking. And then this moment where he does something wrong. And I just like even harder than when we practiced, you know, I was in my roles. I was just like, all right. And I just went and I just like wailed him right across the face. And he just came back and he had the smile on his face. And everyone was just like, wow, you know, and it was just so weird to me. And after the movie, I remember the director kind of like arguing with my agent, being like, you told me it was her first time. You know, like I because they pay a bonus or whatever for the first time because we're kind of awkward, you know, and there was no awkwardness in me. I just like, I nailed it in a sense, you know? And I remember hearing him arguing with my agent. He said it was her first time. And I was like, dude, this is my first time. I've never done this in my life. And he's like, well, lady, you're a natural. Like, you should do this, you know, for a career. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, be an actress, like a dominatrix actress? He's like, no, be a prodomme. I'm like, what is that? Like, I don't even know, you know? That's how like new in the scene I was. So when I heard about this prodomme thing, I was like, tell me more. So I went and I started researching, and this is when I was living in New York. And then a couple of months after that, I came back to Montreal, and the first thing I did was look for a prodomme. And I found a few that were a bit sketchy and a bit along the more like prostitution line, you know. And I was like, no, I want someone who's like, who knows their shit, who's really into this. And thankfully I found Queen Ida, who was still is a transsexual dominatrix who had a dungeon for, I think she had at that point for about 8 years. And just a really beautiful, nice dungeon with different themed rooms. She came highly recommended and was super professional. And she took me under her wing and was my mentor for 2 years. And I mean, she gave me books to read. She gave me homework. Like, it was like a real training, you know? And I'm so grateful that I was able to meet someone who brought me into the scene in a good way, with education, you know, being careful not to hit the kidneys and like all the things. She gave me anatomy courses. And
that's okay. So I need to stop. I just need to stop for a second. Okay. First of all, that's fucking amazing, because so many people in the BDSM industry are not trained, do not practice safely, do not know anatomy, do all sorts of harm to themselves and to the people, their clients. And so the fact that you were like taken under this woman's wing and that she trained you and she gave you all of that. And it's really important, like everybody who's listening that might think about hiring a dom, or B, somebody who's looking to become a pro-dominatrix, you want to make sure that that person is trained well, or
do your homework.
Do your fucking homework. Otherwise, you can do some serious damage. So
absolutely.
I just had to weigh in there. I'm like, right on.
Absolutely. And that's why, like, I was so grateful for her, you know, and that's what I was looking for, like someone that was, you know, that knew their stuff. And she really did. And I'm so grateful for all the knowledge that she gave me, the books, and I worked with her. We were always in a duo for 2 years. You know, every session that we did, I was with her and I was her assistant. And I was never a switch, you know, she never, that's another thing too. Like, be aware of someone who's like, okay, you want to come in? Well, you got to be a switch. And I was like, no, I'm not interested in, so there's this thing, there's being a switch and there's trying the things that you do. That's the difference. So I tried the things that I did so that I could understand the feeling of it. You know, I was spanked, I was flogged, I got tied up. trying to think what else. She tried to mummify me, but there was no way in hell that was going to happen. Because I'm claustrophobic, you know? So for me, ropes, I don't like. It's not something that I'm into. I don't like being tied up. The spanking, I've never really been into the pain, but I could appreciate the intense play, the role play, the energy exchange of it. And I think that that's important, you know? If you're going to spank someone, get spanked. You don't have to do it as a sub or as a bottom, but understand what it feels like, so that when you're doing it to someone, you're not just going out and wailing on them and thinking like, oh, this is what it's about. It's not, you know? And warm-ups was just such an important part of play. It was, you know, it was like proper warm-up, and it's not just warming up the body, it's warming up the mind. Like that's the most important thing, is you want to get that person in that right psychological level to be open, to be enthralled, to be excited, and to just have that energy that's starting to build up. And then you can start doing the percussion play, you know, and bring it into the body.
And just for all of our listeners who are like, oh, there's some terms there. So percussion play and impact play, we're talking about anything that's hitting someone, just so you're aware of what we're talking about there. Okay.
Yeah. Spanking, flogging, caning.
Yeah. Whipping.
Yeah. All the good stuff.
Okay. So how long were you a pro-domme?
So I worked under her for 2 years, and then I was working with her for a year. That place, the landlord ended up kicking us out. And then we opened up a place together, because she was devastated, and I was like, you know what, let's be partners. Like, I'll come in, I'll invest the money, and we'll open up this new dungeon. So that's what we did. We found a new place, and it was a beauty salon. So we completely 100% renovated. We tore rollers down, put walls back up. I had never done that in my life. So I built this dungeon with my hands. We did that for about 8 months. And then we reopened, and 3 months later she retired and left me. At this time, I'm about 22 years old, have no idea how to run a business. And she left me with this business. And I had that place. I had the CMF, is what it was called, Club Montreal Fetish, for 6 years. So I was just short of 10 years that I was a pro-dom. Yeah.
So in that period of time of adventuring, how did it affect your life? Like your outside life, like your friendships, your relationships, your sex life, like all of those pieces.
Everything, because I really jumped into that role. So let me just give you a little prelude to that. So at about 17 years old, I was in a lineup in a store, and a man walked in front of me and just cut in line. And I didn't say anything, but in my mind, I was like arguing with him, and like, I was really upset, you know, but I didn't have the courage to say anything. I was so shy and so stuck and so, I lacked confidence, you know. I was really the victim of my past, of the physical and the verbal abuse. And I was still that person, you know. And I remember getting back home and just being so furious at myself for not respecting myself and not standing up for myself. And at that point, I was like, this is it. Like, I'm done, you know, I'm done being this, like, this pushover. So I wrote down, I created Venetia. And I wrote down, I created this name, and I wrote down everything that she was, you know. She was born at 17, a confident, strong woman who always stands up for herself, always respects herself, knows what she's doing, you know. She has never been hurt, has no past traumas, blah, 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 you know. And I just wrote this list, and then I became an actress every day. And I played this role. I became this person. So by the time I became Mistress Venetia, I had already been Venetia for like 3 years. And then became Mistress Venetia, and then it just like blew up. And then I just became another level of Venetia, you know, who had now like a harem of slaves and submissives and personal subs, who were all at my beck and calling, who were all taking care of me. I had trips. I had shopping. I had whatever I wanted, restaurants, whatever I wanted, I had. So obviously my ego was like, I couldn't even fit in the damn room, right? For those of y'all who can't see, my arms are very widespread right now. So I was so far detached from Veronika. But I had no idea. I didn't realize, because I had become this woman, this Venetia, who was almighty and all powerful, you know. And it was, so my entire life was about that. My entire life was about this persona. So needless to say, the friends that I had, that Veronika had, were no longer existent. They didn't recognize me, and they were from my past. So I kind of didn't want to have anything to do with that either, you know.
Yeah.
So I pushed away all my friends. I was very far from my mother as well. We didn't, you know, we had an on and off kind of relationship that was very feisty and very difficult. And even boyfriends, you know, I had just split up with my long-term boyfriend, my first like big relationship, soulmate. We were together for 8 years. And I had split up with him, and I had men, you know, coming to me, and it was just like, well, I'm unavailable, I'm unattainable, you know, because I was just so high on this level. And then, you know, so this went on my whole time of being a pro-dom. I wasn't really seeing anyone. I was by myself. I had my slaves. And then when that was over, I was home and alone and very lonely, you know. And even when I was amongst my Harlem of people, in retrospect, I realized how lonely I was, even in those moments when I was super surrounded, because I was so far away from me and really not giving myself anything. I was there for everyone as this persona, you know, mistress of these guys, the secretary of my place, the manager, the head mistress for the other mistresses that were working with me or under me at that time, because, you know, again, I had put myself at a different level. And then towards the end of my career as a pro-dom, I had someone approach me, you know, who I found interesting and who was in the fetish scene as well. And he was known in the fetish scene. He was a performer and had a very well-known piercing shop, and that's how we met. I brought my slave to get the head of his penis, Prince Albert, pierced so that I could tie his penis up to his balls. That was so fun. And and he was so impressed, you know, by my demeanor and the way that I had handled everything. And so he started to kind of creep his way into my life, and I was interested, and we started dating. And this was the first time I was dating as a pro-dom. And we would go out to the fetish parties, and for him, this was the moment that was like turn on time. You know, we get to go out to a fetish party and we get to make out, and we're all decked out in our stuff. And I was like, no, like that's not going to happen. When I go out to a fetish party, I'm Mistress Venetia. I'm unattainable. I'm untouchable. I can't be there with a boyfriend. Like, no. And I was like, sorry, we can kiss and make out before we go out. When I get to the club, I'm Mistress V. You're a friend. And then we can make out when we get back home.
Yeah.
How fucked up is that? You know? And it was so hard on him, because that was like I said, that was the moment that he was the most looking forward to. And I denied that moment for us. And it wasn't,
but it makes
really
perfect sense. Like from an industry standpoint, like it makes perfect sense. It's like, this is my persona, right? The world is used to me in this capacity, and I'm not attainable. Like, I'm not human, right? I'm beyond human. I'm a goddess. I'm a goddess. And so therefore, you can't see me do human things like grocery shopping and having a boyfriend.
Precisely.
Like, goddesses don't have boyfriends and go grocery shopping.
Exactly. And also you want to keep this image of like, you know, you want to give that thought alive of like, well, they might be able to have you. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, that's the other thing. You want them to think that you're attainable, even though you're really not, and they don't have a chance in the world. You want to give that illusion to them, you know, that, oh, if they're good enough, maybe they'll have you, you know? So all of that made me very unattainable and very what's the word I'm looking for? Like detached,
Mm-hmm.
very detached. Detached from my friends, detached from my lovers, detached from my family, detached from myself.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, in retrospect, despite the fact that I was doing BDSM and fetishism in a healthy way with my clients, I was doing it in a very unhealthy way with myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that caused a lot of damage in my sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because for that chunk of time, I wasn't really sexually active.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was so focused on my work, and it was you know, obviously BDSM and with your clients, there is that line of sexuality that you walk, right? And for me,
Yes.
it was very important that there was no sex, you know, there
Yes.
was no prostitution, there was no hand jobs, you know what I mean? If he was a good boy, maybe he'd get to do his own happy ending, you know,
Yeah.
but it wasn't a guarantee. It wasn't like, oh yeah, you get to do that every time. Like, no.
No.
So because of that, I didn't allow myself to really tap into my own sexuality, because if there was a moment where I was doing something and I would get turned on, I was like, oh, that's wrong. Like, I'm professional. This is not professional of me to get turned on by doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So I detached myself from my sexuality and my sexual desires. And 6 years, that's a long time.
That's a long fucking time.
Yeah. So, yeah, fuck, like I'm thinking about it now as I'm saying it, you know, it's just like, wow, like that's crazy, you know, like no wonder I still have these blockages, and I'm still working through that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still working through discovering my own sexuality and what it is that I like for myself, and
Mm-hmm.
who it is that I am in that power, you know. I'm still discovering that. So, yeah.
So well, that's beautiful. That was very beautiful share.
Thank you.
My turn.
Yes, please. I know I tend to ramble, so you got to cut me off.
So it's interesting, like how I became, so I'm a holistic sexual wellness specialist, right? That's my jam, what I do. And BDSM in my own personal life was playing out in this way of like, the first time I spanked a girl was at like this orgy party, and I freaked the fuck out. Like, I was like, this surge of like pure lust and electricity surged through me when I heard the slap and the flogger hit her ass, and her you know, sound that came out of her, and this surge came over me, and I freaked out because I was like, I can't be a sadist. Like, I can't get off on hurting somebody. Like, there's no way that this is okay. Like, no way this is okay. And I didn't know at the time it was because of my trauma. Like, I grew up, I had a lot of sexual abuse trauma, satanic ritual abuse trauma, and so that piece, I was so afraid that I would become like the perpetrators that abused me. And the fact that I had this sexual arousal from hurting people, I was like, ooh. So I remember hitting her, wave of electricity of arousal come over me, and me screaming and throwing the flogger out of my hand.
Wow.
And it was about 10 years, actually. It took about 10 years of me exploring on a personal level being submissive. It was like almost like subconsciously, it was like, if you can learn to be submissive, then you can be safe being dominant. You won't be a sociopath. It was like this, somehow in my brain, it was like, that's how I had figured it out. And so I really dropped into surrendering, letting go of control, which was very profoundly healing for me as a control freak. And my nature is incredibly dominant, so to like surrender and let go and, you know, all those pieces was like really powerful. And learning that process, it was like, then I leaned back in to the dom side of things. And, you know, one of my partners was like, hey, you know, like, why don't you like, you know, do some CBT? I'm like, cognitive behavioral therapy? I'm like, I can do that with you. He's like, no, cockball torture. I'm like, oh, no, I could not. I worship the penis. I love the penis. There's no way I could hit the penis. I can't do it. I just couldn't do it. Just couldn't do it. And every time I would see it in porn, I'd be like, oh my God, I can't do this. I would love the penis. Why are you hurting the penis? So it was like, it was so funny. Like, it was this funny little adventure for me. So anyway, so I eventually got over that, and he's like, hit it. And I'm like, no. He's like, hit it. So I hit it. And then he squealed. And again, that power, right? That power moved through me, and the arousal of that sadist power moved through me. And I let out this like evil laugh of pure delight.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, it's like, right on. Okay, come here. I did it again, and I did it again, and I did it again, and I'm like, oh, I like this. And so that was kind of my own personal journey of like embracing the sadist side of me and the dom side of me fully and completely on a sexual level. But in that time, I was teaching lots, right? I was facilitating and teaching and education all over the place, and conferences and talks and
on the holistic side, not on the BDSM side.
Oh, and on the BDSM
both
side.
Okay.
Right? So in the BDSM world, I was also doing all of this education, right?
Okay.
But I wouldn't allow myself to have any, it would just be like going through the motions. Like I wasn't allowed to have any arousal. Like I couldn't be turned on by it, right? Like it was just like, I'm just talking about it, teaching, all that kind of stuff.
Being a professional.
Being a professional, exactly. Being a professional. And so as I was being a professional, I wasn't allowed to, get off. I wasn't allowed to be turned on. Like, it's not my thing, right? So fast forward, I'm in my work, and BDSM is a really important part of my job because I'm doing all this education, and I'm helping couples, and I'm helping everybody to do it safely and consensually and all the things. And one of my clients says to me, he goes to a dom, and he's like, I didn't feel safe. I didn't trust her, and I didn't get what I needed. He's like, I know that you teach this, and I know that you practice this in your own life and all this stuff. And he's like, would you go on this adventure with me so that I could explore this? And I was just like, and he was a client. He was a sexual wellness client of mine. And I have very firm lines, like there's no sexual activity, like that would be radical breaching of my code of professional etiquette at that point. And so we talked it through, and I really trusted him, and he really trusted me. And I said, okay, here are the rules. And I set the parameters, and I set the rules, and I said, we're going to use BDSM to make sure you do your fucking homework. So he originally came to see me because he had like anxiety issues, panic attacks, porn addiction. Like that's why he originally came to see me. And I would give him all these great assignments to help him reprogram, and he wouldn't do them. And so he would still stay stuck. And I was like, all right, here's the deal. You want me to beat you? I will beat you, but we're going to do it.
Do your homework.
You're going to do your fucking homework, right? If you want me to beat you, you're going to have to do your homework. And so we started this whole thing that actually led me into the path of doing BDSM wellness coaching and supporting my clients and using basically BDSM as behavioral modification. And so that started that process. But what I started to find was that I was getting turned on. And this was like a very interesting experience for me. I had to really sit with. I was like, all right, like I just had a little orgasm from beating my client, and I was working, and I'm not supposed to have an orgasm while I'm working. That's not professional, and blah, 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 and blah, 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 and like going down the rabbit hole of like, what does that mean? And all of those pieces. And so then I really I was like, well, the pro-dom side could give me an avenue in which I could both service my clients and give myself permission to also get off. And have protocols of like how far that line is, and that it's not prostitution, and that it really is about BDSM, and it is about doming, and there's no hand jobs, and no one's fucking anybody, and like all those kind of pieces. but that I could get off on the fact that I was fucking mean and getting up and enjoying the thing. And so that's been a really beautiful journey for me, as I still am a pro-dominatrix, as well as all the other things that I do. But it's like, I'm very specific about the clients that I take and the protocols and the rules around that, and that I will not do anything. For me, I will not dom unless there's something arousing for me in it. And so it's a very interesting change of things. It's like, if a client's like, hey, I really want you to do this thing, I'm like, yeah, that doesn't get me off. No.
No. And that's really interesting that you're saying that, because in the end, when I was like sort of, because I was so detached from myself and I was so unhappy and everything, I actually started to feel like I was prostituting myself when I was doing the things that I didn't want to do. Even though it wasn't a sexual prostitution, it was an energy prostitution. I was giving away my energy and not getting anything back in return. And I like selling my soul, and doing something. So it's really interesting that you say that. And I can understand why you do that.
Yeah. And so now it's like, for me, it's like, you either fit into one of these three categories. You either come see me from a holistic sexual wellness perspective, you come see me as a BDSM wellness, which means that there's goals and expectations and homework and all sorts of fuck shit needs to happen. Or you come see me as a prodomme, where I'm very selective about the clients that I take, and the acts that I do are the things that turn me on and arouse me. And there's something really liberating about the fact that, I get off and I actually have my clients don't get to have orgasms, but I have orgasms. And then on my personal life, I found the balance in that, so that in my personal life, the really deep sexual exploration, I have my own personal harem. So I have my own personal submissives, my own personal lovers that I can fully release. There is no boundaries. There are no rules about lines in the sand, all those kind of things. And
you've developed a relationship with.
Otherwise, I would be burnt out. Otherwise, if I didn't, for me, that's how I've created the balance for me. If I didn't have my private, personal life of exploration, I wouldn't be able to show up in the world and for my clients and all those kind of things.
Absolutely.
And anytime,
and that's what happened to me.
Yeah.
I burnt out.
Yeah.
I burnt out. All my energy was just going out, and so much energy being held of being this person that I'm really not, and then not honoring the person that I really am. And then at the end, you're just like, well, who's the submissive here? The client tells me what time to show up, what he wants me to wear, what he wants me to do. And then I come in and I have to do this list of things. And I'm not allowing myself to be turned on or to get off on it. So it's like, well, who's topping who here? Right?
Very, very.
So yeah, and it's exactly what happened. I burnt out. I had my first burnout, completely overwhelmed, stressed out, depressed. I gave the keys to one of the mistresses that had just a few months ago started working with me. I gave her the leash to my slave, leash to my dog, and the keys to my dungeon. And I said, I hope you will take care of these most important things in my life. I gotta go. And I left. And I left for 3 weeks to Florida. I slept for 3 days. And then wondered what the hell is wrong with me. I have everything that a woman wants, in a sense. When you think about it, when you look at it from the outside, I get all the trips, all the shoes, all the clothes. I get, I have a whole bunch of men who do whatever they want for me. I'm a fucking pro-Domme. What else does a woman want? And it's like, all I wanted was Veronika inside. It was just like, I just want a bit of attention. Where's me in here? And it took me a couple of years to figure that out. So kudos to you for seeing that and honoring that and showing up for yourself in that practice.
Well, thank you for honoring that. And so tell us where you're at now. So this was going. So what did you shift? So you retired, and what did you do? Like, you shifted gears to give space for Veronika.
Yeah. So I retired as a pro-dom, and I kept a few of, it's just funny when you're saying that, I was thinking, and I was like, oh, you're right. You know, like I did keep a handful of clients that I enjoyed. You know, I got off on the stuff that we were doing, you know what I mean? So I kept a few clients on the side, and I wouldn't advertise, and I didn't take anybody new, but some of my old regulars I kept seeing every now and then. And then I started working in events. And that's when I started working with Mondose, and I went down to being Miss V. So I dropped the mistress, dropped the Venetia, went down to Miss V, and that was like that was like the beginning of the discovery of Veronika. But I wasn't quite Veronika yet, you know. So it was just like I was just V. And so the first thing that really did that major shift was my practice of meditation. So when I came back from the burnout, I went and spoke with a friend, and I was like, man, I'm just so lost right now. You know, I don't know who I am. I'm so unhappy. I've never made more money in my life. I have all these things, and I'm just so miserable, and I hate myself, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so he recommended meditation. I had never meditated in my life. He gave me a cassette tape. Tells you how old I am. And it was a 30-minute meditation on each side. And I listened to it a total of 3 times, so 90-minute total meditation. And he told me about Vipassana, and which is a 10-day silent meditation retreat where you meditate 10 hours a day for 10 days in complete silence, no music, no writing, no reading, no phone, no sex, no meat, no sugar, obviously no drugs, no smoking. So like nothing. You, yourself, your spirit, and your mind, and a little bit of vegetables here and there, and that's it for 10 days.
Okay, so kudos to you for surviving that. Fucking, I couldn't do it. People keep asking me. They're like, "Are you gonna go?" I'm like, "Nope. I don't need that in my journey." So right on.
Thank you.
Woo, woo,
yeah.
Sister.
And with 90 minutes of meditation experience in my life,
Right
90
on.
minutes, and I go for 10 full days.
Nothing like extreme. Go big or go home.
I'm an extremist all the way. Go hard or go home. Yeah, that was probably one of the most intense things I've ever done in my life, for sure. So that was a big Kickstarter, for sure. A kick in the face as well as a Kickstarter. And that was when I really saw myself, and I understood. That's when I really saw Veronika in the middle of this, I call it a dragon egg, you know, because the shell was so thick. It was like rock, you know, it was like layers and layers and layers and layers of protection. Every time I had been hurt, every time I, you know, had been disrespected, all the abuse, all the times I didn't show up for myself, all the times I allowed myself to break my own boundaries, you know, all those were these layers of rock that had been put on top of me. And I saw that in my meditation. And it was the first time I felt compassion for myself, you know, of just like, oh man, I see you. Like I saw me for once, for the first time ever, you know? And that's when I was like, okay, like we got work to do, you know? And that's where I really began the work. And that's when I dropped Venetia and started to come back to myself. And through the events, Mondose is like a sexual libertine. You know, it's not a swinger party, so no exchange would happen during the parties, but we called it a meet, greet, and grope.
Okay. All right.
You know, so it's where you meet the other people, and then you can kind of grope around and stuff. But if you want to, you know, go and have fun and play, go to La Rage or go home or go to a hotel or whatever, you know. So nothing really happened during the parties, but it was a good place to meet. It was a safe place. And it was very important for us. We were very much on women's safety, where they would be able to come in a G-string and pasties. And there would not be one man that would touch her, harass her, you know, slap her on the ass. Like you would be immediately expelled, banned from our place, you know. Yeah. And we had little security guards, and we had clients that we'd give little badges to, that were like trusted friends or trusted clients, that would give like a little patrol badge too, you know, and if they saw something that wasn't right, or someone that was being harassed or being disrespected, they would like pull out their little badge and say, hey, you know, like this is not cool here. So it was really a safe place for women. And that was the first time I really experienced that, that kind of openness, that kind of freedom, that kind of open sensuality in a safe, respected place where, you know, the woman was honored in a different way. You know, the way I was being honored as a dominatrix was through force. It was like, you will respect me. You know what I mean? It didn't come naturally in a sense. It was like, well, I'm Ms. V. You want to be I'm Mistress Venetia. You want to be in my life? These are the rules. This is how you do it. If you don't do it this way, screw off. You know what I mean? It's my way or the highway. Yeah. Whereas in this, we didn't have to demand it. It was offered to us. Mm-hmm. So that was really interesting. And that allowed Venetia to kind of slow her roll and kind of like relax a little bit into it and deflate the ego. And the producer's interest in me of working with him was my background in fetish. So he did want me to bring that aspect, but again, I brought it from an aspect of vanillas, you know, newbies, people who don't know what fetish and BDSM are. We call them vanillas. Yeah. So I was bringing it from a very soft, very delicate, very nurturing, very educational, informative aspect. So my role was Ms. B, Mistress of Ceremonies. I would introduce the artists that would come up and do performances on stage, and I would hold this. We always had like a little fetish area where we would introduce little things. So I always had latex gloves. I would introduce latex and the touch and why latex. You know, it's not clothes. Latex is a fetish. You know. It's the touch and the feel. And once I had a vacuum bed to give people the experience of being under a full sheet of latex, and sensorial play and all those things, and very light floggings and little things like that. So I would introduce it in that aspect. And I really love that because that took me away from that pedestal, brought me down with the people, and allowed me to bring it in an educational way, which I really loved. And then I was able to tap into and allow myself to explore for me as well. And then, so I did the events and held that space for about another 6 years that I did that. And then I had a falling out with my business partner. We split ways. It was his business that I came into, so I split off, and I ended up, oddly enough, marrying a super vanilla boy. and I think it was because I was just coming out of the dungeon at that point, and I was just kind of sick of it, you know. Yeah. It's too much, and again, I needed to refine myself. So it was nice to have someone that wasn't in love with Mistress Venetia, that wasn't in love with that persona, that actually liked me for me, and I didn't have to perform, you know. Mm-hmm. But you know, the fetish and the BDSM is a part of me. You know, I was playing a role, Mistress Venetia, but there's kinks that were interesting to me that I really enjoyed. And I wanted to discover that part of me for me. And I couldn't do that with my husband because he wasn't into it. You know, he was like, he tried and he was like, it's just not really my thing. So then again, I was like denying an aspect of myself. And I was in this vanilla relationship that I wasn't content because I wasn't honoring all the layers of myself. So it's kind of been a story of my life, sadly, in a way, of just like really not honoring, not really honoring myself. One, I think number one, because I didn't really know, you know, I didn't allow myself to kind of discover. And two, because it was just like I was just like a victim of circumstance in a sense. You know, I ended up with this vanilla boy who was amazing, beautiful man who really took care of me, but who just wasn't into discovering that sexual aspect. And I tried opening up and having other partners, and but it just wasn't the same. You know, like I didn't allow myself to really open up and to really discover. So it's honestly only been really like lately since I'm single again, separated from my partner, that I'm really tapping into and discovering, what do I want? You know, what do I want as a woman, as a goddess, as a sexual being, you know, and rediscovering that power that has been kind of seeping out and really wanting to come out, but hasn't really like exploded yet, you know?
Beautiful. So
Yeah.
tell us what you do now.
So after the events,
you do stuff with leather, do you not?
I
Make
do. Yeah,
harnesses?
exactly.
Yes,
Exactly. So that's it. After the events, I didn't really know what I was going to do. And my husband at the time, he had started the leather company and doing leather accessories. And I didn't know what I was going to do, you know, with my life. I was a bit in a midlife crisis, and he just took the tools and he was like, take these, you're an artist, create. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know what to do. And we had a fetish party coming up. So I was like, oh, I'll make myself a little harness, you know, for the fetish party. And then got a compliment on it. Oh, where'd you get that from? I made it. Oh, can you make me one? Okay. And then it just kind of like organically started that way. And I just started making harnesses, and I had a couple of extra. I threw them on Etsy. They sold. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then someone invited me, said, oh, I see you do harnesses. They invited me to do an event and sell my stuff at one of the fetish events. So I started like that. And then it just like all of a sudden I turned around and I'm like, holy shit, I have a business. It just kind of organically happened. You know, I didn't plan this. Yeah. So all of a sudden I have this business of creating harnesses. And through, once I started doing the
so describe a harness, because so people have an idea of what we're talking about here. So when you say harness, what kind of a harness? Strap-on harness? What kind of harness?
So we're talking about, so originally the first product was leather straps that just kind of wrap around your body. They were mainly women focused because I don't have a degree in design and, you know, making stuff. I just kind of did everything, learned everything on the fly. So everything was kind of sized on me. So I had started with doing like a bralette, you know, like nice little strap that kind of accentuates the breast, kind of like a bra, but with no cup. And then I got into doing things for the legs. So I did a little belt with like a little leg strap that goes around the legs. And then I started to, as I got better with the things, then I started to develop more models. And then I started to do things for men. And they're, you know, mainly, I guess my original market was very niche and for the BDSM crowd. So something you would wear over your latex catsuit, you know, to give it a little bit of a contrast, something you would wear with lingerie, you know, to have that lace and leather kind of look. And then things that were more for play. So choker with an O-ring, leash, got into doing cuffs as well, got into doing strap-on harnesses. So things that were a little bit more play oriented. And then after about 3 years, of realizing that the leather is very focused with the BDSM fetish crowd, and I wanted to open up to the more vanillas again, to the people that the leather was just a little bit too hard. And then I started doing the elastic body straps. So this was like, you get the same kind of look, same kind of aspect as the leather harnesses, but with this soft satin elastic that's a little bit daintier that you can wear just to accentuate your lingerie as well. Like I could wear under this shirt, for example, and just have straps that kind of poke out from the shirt. So wanting to bring it to a more mainstream and show that you can wear it with clothes, not just for the bedroom, and bring it more into the fashion world. And we really succeeded at doing that. People really received our elastic body strap line really well. And we started to introduce that to the people who didn't even know what a harness was and had never even been introduced to that or seen it. Or, you know, I had a few people who came to the booth and be like, well, I've never seen a harness in real life, you know, like it was a unicorn or something.
Yeah.
You know? And it was great. Like I got to, you know, put this on their bodies and find the right piece for them and see them, you know, just like, oh, wow, like feel this confidence in them. And then we got to the point of sizing, where we would have, you know, rounder, more voluptuous, big breasted women who would come by want to get fitted. And I'd be like, oh, I could make it custom for you. You know, we make everything ourselves. We can make it custom. And they'd be like, yeah, that's what everybody else says too. And then walk away. And the first time someone said that to me, I was like, oh man, that sucks. You know, like I totally put myself in her shoes, and I was like, of course, like, no, we got to make stuff for everyone. Like everybody is accepted and welcomed. And then
yes, and that you
so
know, it's so important as somebody who has huge breasts. I can't buy anything anywhere. Like everything I have that, you know, like my corsets, they were custom made for me. All of my stuff has to be custom made because otherwise it doesn't fit right. It doesn't look right. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't, you know, all of a sudden you don't feel sexy because it's like it's cutting in.
Not made for you.
It's not made for your body shape, you know? So kudos and I just want to take a moment just to, like, as a woman who has more voluptuous curves, thank you for taking the time to include us in the process of being able to buy stuff that makes us feel sexy.
Absolutely. And that's when the shift really happened with Starr Creations. Was when we started to do that, then I really realized what I was doing, that we were more than just harnesses. We were about boosting confidence. That's the business I was in, was bringing the confidence back to women, having women regain their not just their confidence, but their power, and reclaim their bodies and honor their bodies with all their curves and all their scars and their stretch marks and all the beautiful imperfections that make them unique, you know? And because when we started doing that, and then I would see the women walk by the booth and be like, oh, that's for the skinny bitches, you know? And I'd be like, no, I got you. Come in here. Like, I can fit you, you know? And they'd be like, you can't fit me. And I remember this woman, she was a big girl. Oh man, her thighs were like really round and big booty and big hips and just giant boobs. And I was like, I don't know if we can fit her, but we're gonna try, you know, like I really want to. And then she was looking at some pieces, and I'm like, okay, I got the piece for you. So we pulled it out and we brought it around her, and we opened up our sliders to make it, you know, wider, and brought it around her, and it fit her. And I was so proud. I was like, yes, like we got this, you know? And she was blown away. She was like, this has never happened in my life. I've never been to a place where someone can fit me. It's always custom, always. And she looked at herself in the mirror and she grew, man. Her chest opened up. She grew 2 inches, looked at herself and was like, I look good. Like, yes, you know? And that was just such a blessing moment for me. And that's really when we realized what we were about, and we really started working on that. And, you know, I'm really pushing my mission now out about that, and wanting to be as diverse as we can. And one thing that we realized, like I've always thought about myself as being a super diverse and accepting. And with this whole Black Lives Matter movement, I realized that, you know, we haven't been as inclusive as I know that I want to be, you know? So we've really been pushing out our mission and speaking up about it, because it's like in my mind, this is what we're about, but people don't really see it. So we've been making a point of looking for diverse models, not just in body size, but ethnicity, color, disabilities as well. You know what I mean? Like, I want to welcome everybody for real. And we've gotten just so much beautiful comments from people, and so much support, and photographers wanting to work with us for free, just because they're just like, wow, like, yes, I believe in this movement. I want to be part of this, and working with us. And that's been such a great honor for me. And that's really kept me going, you know, where it's not just about the product, it's about what we do with the product. It's about how the product makes you feel, you know. That's really what we want to promote. And I'm honored to be doing this work.
So how can people find you?
So our website is starrcreations.ca. Okay. Where we do most of our promotions is on our Instagram, also starrcreations_ca. Okay. You can find us on Facebook as well, same thing, starrcreations.ca. And we also have a YouTube channel where we do some fun videos, and we have some of our Starr inspirers. I don't like to say influencer, because we don't want to influence people We want to inspire people. So for us, they're called Star Inspirers, and they've done some little videos to talk about their either struggle with weight or struggle with loving their body after having children, and what that little tips and tricks that they've done to really own their bodies the way they are in this moment. So that's a really fun place to go check out and get some fun visuals as well.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So what's one piece of advice that you would give somebody who was looking at becoming a pro-dom?
Homework. Do your homework. Read books. What is it? Screw the roses, give me the thorns. I'll double check that and let you know. Great book. Find someone who isn't just in it for the money or to beat men. You know, so many women unfortunately are coming from abuse and hatred, and it's a way to kind of get back at guys. It's not, you know, that's dangerous. Stay away from that. It's dangerous. Yeah. Stay away from that, you know? So do your homework, look at, there's tons of documentaries out there and really good films about it and tons of books, you know? So do your homework, just read up on it, and anatomy is a huge part of that as well. You know, you hit somebody wrong on the spine or on the kidneys, you can damage them. So know what you're doing before you start doing it, and find yourself someone, for me, my practice buddy was a pillow. When I started flogging and bullwhipping, especially, pillow. You know, get your aim right before you start doing it on someone. Find the right tools. Start slow. You know, it's not about pain. It's not about bringing it to the max. It's about slowly bringing it upwards. So find the right percussion tools that are soft and that you can't damage someone with to start. And then work your way up. Take your time.
Beautiful. I support that 100%. My advice to anybody who wants to become a pro-dom is figure out what it is and why you want to do it. Mm-hmm. So dig deep into yourself. What are you going to get out of this experience? Why do you want this? And what are your limits? And really know what those limits are within yourself so that you don't end up in a situation, in a scenario where you hate who you are, where you feel shame because of what you're doing. You know, that that you can move into it from a place of sexual liberation and sexual freedom and sexual awakening, not from a place of shame, guilt, and self-loathing that can happen, and being re-victimized and abused and all these things that can happen. So really, before you get, you know, like you said, do all of your homework so that you're safe, but also look internally into what is your motivator behind you wanting to do this.
And set your boundaries.
And set your boundaries and stick by your boundaries no matter what. No matter how much someone offers you, do not cross your boundaries, because once you cross them, you have a lot of healing. You can't go back, and you got to do a lot of fucking healing within yourself to clear that shit out.
Yeah, it takes just 1 second to break your boundaries, but it can take years of work to fix that damage.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, what would be your one piece of advice for somebody who's looking to hire a pro-dominatrix?
Almost the same thing, you know, do your homework. Like, it's hard to get references sometimes for dominatrix, but you can find some out there, you know, see how much years of experience they have. Look at their surroundings, you know, what do they do? Are they doing any educational work? Are they, you know, someone who's doing erotic massage as well as dominatrix probably doesn't really know what they're doing BDSM wise. Not all the time, but sometimes they just kind of like see it as another avenue, you know, and it's they're coming from an aspect of doing erotic massages, not from BDSM. So again, just do your homework, do your research, know what it is that you're looking for, that you want, and don't be afraid to ask that, you know, ask for for their experience, for, just like when you're hiring someone for a job, you ask their CV,
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
I also agree. And then the second piece that I would add to that would be listen to your intuition, listen to your gut, right? Listen to your gut. Does this person don't listen to your genitals. Okay. Your genitals will lie to you. Okay. But listen to your intuition that says this is a good fit for me or not a good fit for me. Number one. Yeah. Number two, do your research. Like you said, very important. V's totally right. Research, and look at their experience level. Do they know what they're fucking talking about? Because let's be honest. You're going to let some random stranger tie you up and do crazy ass shit to you that you do not know, that you do not trust. Make sure that you ask all the questions, that you establish that there's a rapport of a trust factor before you let some stranger tie you up. And I think that's an important piece, is that I know that when we drop into the arousal response of that, that's hot, that's fucking sexy, that's a huge turn on, that I'm like totally powerless, and particularly for men, you don't feel powerless very often, so that's a very powerful aphrodisiac. But it's still not a smart plan to let some stranger tie you up that you don't know who they are or what their skill sets are.
And set your boundaries ahead of time too. Yep. It's not the time to think about your safe word or what your boundaries are when you're tied up in the middle of a session. Know your boundaries before you meet and share them. Let them know, like, listen, this is a no-go for me. Humiliation, I'm not into. Let them know. This I'm into, and like, just be clear about what it is that you need and why you're doing this. Why are you searching for this? What's your need? Are you just looking to get off, or is there something that comes from somewhere and that you want to discover? And have that open, honest communication.
And if you can't have that open, honest communication, then there's something off about that dom, because a good dom wants to know all of those information, that it's just as important for the dom as it is for you, that they know all of the whys, all the pieces, all the hard limits, all the things, so that no one does any harm. So if they're not asking those questions, they're not allowing you space to do that, then they're not a good, I would highly avoid it. Just like we talked about, set your boundaries, because once something fucking happens, you can't take it back.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. What's one thing that you would have told yourself? What you know now, and you would have told the younger version of yourself, that would have made a world of difference for you?
Honor yourself no matter what. I feel like I so often just showed up for others and really didn't show up for myself. And that, I think, is my biggest regret, in a sense of not showing up for myself, not honoring my own boundaries, not taking the time to discover what my boundaries are, to set them, to voice them, to respect them.
Beautiful. The one thing I would have told myself is that enjoy being a sadist. You have all the skills and all the tools at your disposal that will prevent you from being a sociopath. So have more fun, hit more people.
I didn't have a hard time with that one. I was just saying this. Well, with masochists, of course, only with masochists. But when I found a true masochist, ooh, man, I just love that shit.
Yeah. So thank you very much, V, for being on, My Orgasmic Life. All of the ways is that you can spend time with her will be in the show notes. For all of the listeners, thanks for hanging out with us. I know this was an extra long show than we normally have, but we got into conversations, and this was a good one. So so you can watch it and listen it in your own time frame.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for being here. All right. So all the things, here we go. Spend more time with me. You can see me at succulentliving.com. For all your BDSM and wellness needs, you can visit me at empressgaia.com. Please follow me on social media under Gaia Morrissette and Succulent Living, as well as Empress Gaia. And for all of your podcasting needs, hello, listen to me at My Orgasmic Life, which can be found on all of your podcasting platforms, Google, Spotify, Apple, as well as we have our own app that you can download from the Google Play Store so that you can have with me anywhere you are, wherever your phone is. You can be like, I need a Gaia moment. All right, till next time, dig deep, love yourself, and be sexually liberated and free. Bye-bye. Mwah.
Ciao.